Hello everyone, GoldenNova here, and welcome to part 2 of the Supreme Darkness release roundup. In the last videos, we covered the Arcanaphores, Atlanteans, Cristrons, and Fiendsmiths, and while they got some pretty hefty updates, this is the one that has the real heavy hitters. Now, am I just saying that because I'm biased towards the next archetype we're about to talk about in particular? Absolutely! Let's get to it. Today's episode is brought to you by my lovely patrons, as well as the wonderful people over at Dragon Shield. Get the sleeves as strong as dragon scales and save 5% on your order by using coupon code GoldenNova at checkout. Part 5, Gladiator Beast. Yes, finally! Ever since these got revealed, I have been so excited to see them in the card pool. As one of the first archetypes I really got invested in, any update to the theme is greatly appreciated. Chaos Impact's introduction of Domitianus, don't laugh, was a pretty solid addition to the lineup to help keep the opponent on the back foot. Not to mention we got more tools than ever to help deploy our beasts. So how does Supreme Darkness iterate on that design? Gladiator Beast Magister is a level 3 Earth Beast monster with 1200 attack and 2000 defense that has our bread and butter Gladiator Beast effect. At the end of the battle phase, if this card battles, you can shuffle it into the deck to special summon a different Gladiator Beast monster from your deck. But the rest of this card reads like pure gas. While in the hand, you can reveal this card and a Gladiator Beast monster in your hand to special summon both. And if this card is special summoned by the effect of a Gladiator Beast monster, you can add a Gladiator Spell or Trap card from your deck to your hand. And guess what? If you summon this by its own effect, that was a Gladiator Beast doing it, netting you a free card. And because it searches Gladiator Spell and Trap cards, not just Gladiator Beast ones, you can nab cards like Rejection, Proving Ground, or Return if you're really desperate for some nasty brewing. Though we still have to be content with never being able to search Disarm, Parry, or Defensive Tactics. A real shame there. You'll also be triggering the effect of whatever you summon alongside it. So this wolf is ready to turbocharge your plays, which is going to speed up our plans immensely, giving our opponent less time to operate while we spend more time being good at punching things. Now, this does run counter to needing the battle phase to advance our game plan, which has been the identity of the theme since forever. But our sad devotion to this ancient religion hasn't helped us conjure up any tournament wins, or given us clairvoyance enough to read our opponent's counter.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Test Bear is a level 4 Earth Beast monster with 900 attack and 600 defense, and if you control a Gladiator Beast monster special summoned from the deck or extra deck, you can special summon this card from your hand, which you can only do once per turn. You can tribute this card, then shuffle one Gladiator Beast monster from your hand or face-up field into the deck or extra deck to special summon up to 2 Gladiator Beast monsters from your deck, and this is treated as having been special summoned by the effect of a Gladiator Beast monster. Another member of the Test team. These have been crucial to the success of our Gladiator Beast decks, and this reads like a souped up version of Test Tiger. Tiger effectively enables any Gladiator Beast monster effect by trading one you control in for one from your deck, but this does mean it resolves as a -1. Bear, on the other hand, can grab one from your field or hand to get you 2 Gladiator Beasts, which means you're no longer losing out on card economy, while doubling its effectiveness. And if you have a Gladiator Beast on the field that's been summoned via its on-theme methods, you get to summon this out for free. This means it works well as a way to start things off in the early game, but also as an extender once your game plan is online. Now, at first, I was bummed that Test Bear only got its special summon if you controlled a Glad Beast summoned Glad Beast, but because you can shuffle a monster from the hand, well, it doesn't really much matter. This, sadly, does not keep it from being a huge Ash magnet, and because the effect isn't a quick one, it's still susceptible to any number of quick effect negates or removals. So while I find it to be the superior Test main deck monster, it doesn't really fix much. Which, sadly, is the second time I've had to say this about a bear card in recent memory. I'm just saying, the next Celestial's Core set better have some good bears in it, or I'm gonna lose it. Gladiator Beast Claudius is a level 12 Dark Beast fusion monster with 3700 attack and 2600 defense, requiring 5 Gladiator Beast monsters as material, which sounds like a lot, but it must first be special summoned from the extra deck by shuffling the above cards you control from your field and or graveyard into the deck or extra deck, so the contact fusion is a lot more tolerable than it otherwise would have been. If summoned this way, you can conduct your next battle phase twice. And once per turn, if your opponent activates a monster effect except during the damage step, you can activate the following effect, depending on whose turn it is. If it's during your turn, special summon a Gladiator Beast monster from your deck, and if it's during your opponent's turn, you can special summon a level 11 or lower Gladiator Beast monster from your extra deck, ignoring its summoning conditions. Good grief! The double battle phase by itself represents 7,400 points of battle damage with this, and the more Glad Beasts you can bring to the fray, the better. And you know what else 2 battle phases means? 2 Gladiator Beast triggers! Go through 1 battle phase, swap out your monsters, get their effects, go in for even more of an offense, and if your opponent is still somehow standing, you can swap them out again for more utility effects. And bolstering your lineup once per turn whenever your opponent activates a monster effect gives you a lot to work with. Notably, that level 11 restriction is only really there to keep you from summoning other copies of Claudius and your Link monsters. Every other fusion is on the table. I love this card from the very bottom of my heart. The double battle phase is such an elusive effect in this game, and to have it show up on the, well, original Battle Phase Matters deck fills me with unabashed glee. And to add inclusion to indulgence, they went ahead and added all the anime Glad Beasts to this big collaboration. You can see we've got Tamer Editor's antlers on the staff here, how very nice of them. Gladiator Beast Darius is a Link 2 Dark Beast Warrior monster with 1700 attack, requiring 2 monsters, including a Gladiator Beast monster, as material. During your opponent's battle phase, Gladiator Beast monsters you control can't be destroyed by battle or card effects, and if this card is Link summoned, you can special summon a level 4 or lower Gladiator Beast monster from your hand or grave, or if your opponent controls a monster, you can special summon a Gladiator Beast monster from your deck instead. Also, for the rest of the turn, you can only use Gladiator Beast monsters as Link material. Very funny way to carry on the Tri-Brigade energy, I suppose? The protection effect kinda irks me. I mean, during our turn, that's kinda something we can work with, but only protecting during the battle phase of our opponent's turn? That's fantastically easy to work around. Thankfully, its other effect is pretty clean. Even if you only use a single Glad Beast for the Link summon of this card, you'll have a target to bring back with the effect, triggering their effect again, or for the first time if they haven't already, with you gaining access to any Glad Beast from your deck if your opponent has established literally any monsters. And hey, if the monster you bring back doesn't have much combat prowess, just make a Link 3 with it. The restriction only keeps you to using Glad Beast as material, the actual card pool is wide open. It's cool to see one of the mainstay Glad Beasts of the original era getting a retrain that can do some real work, and aside from Test Panther, it's one of our more active Link monsters, helping to give Glad Beasts some pre-battle combos to prep for the real deal. You could say it's really good at whipping them into shape. Flavius, Colosseum of the Gladiator Beast, is a field spell card that lets you discard a card to add a Gladiator Beast monster from your deck to your hand. When an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can special summon a Gladiator Beast monster from your deck, and it can't be destroyed by battle. And during the end phase, if a Gladiator Beast monster was special summoned from the deck this turn, you can set a Gladiator Trap card from your deck. Oh yeah, now that's the stuff. I would normally be upset with a theme getting a field spell when it already had one, especially when it provides no synergy in the process. Heck, I barely like when Triamid does it. But Colosseum, Cage of the Gladiator Beasts? It sucks. Flavius, on the other hand, rules. The summon effect is really strong, especially when trying to keep yourself safe from a big offensive push, and the battle protection seals the deal. It also combos with Gladiator's Rejection to get another Glad Beast into rotation. It also means you get that trap card set, and I can't tell you how much more awesome Gladiator Naumachia gets when you can just pull it from your deck at the end of your turn. If you get it set during your own battle phase and your opponent triggers the summon from the deck effect by attacking, they're gonna have to keep attacking thanks to Naumachia. But that's not the only candidate. Trojan and Lash are basically worth forgetting forever, but Charge is a big piece of removal, and the famous War Chariot says no to your opponent's attempts to interact with you via monster effects. And all of that is without mentioning that the field spell gets you a Glad Beast every turn as long as you pay into the discard. This is the field spell the theme deserves, and I'm so happy to have been around long enough to see the old base of operations back in its glory days. Though it seems like it was operating on old Kaizo video game rules, I don't know how anything is getting done with all those platforms being full of spikes. Part 6, Poker Nights. I know they're actually called the Three Musketeers of face cards, but I don't care. These have been a fun little oddity in the game for a while, and despite having gotten the spotlight treatment in King's Court, aren't really doing anything. but that just makes them an even more deserving candidate for a follow-up. But is it any good? Signs point to not great. Double Wild is a quick play spell card that targets a level 5 or lower monster that you control, and adds a level 10 monster from your deck to your hand with the same original type. Then you can discard a card, and if you do, special summon a monster from your hand with the same type in defense position. But you can't special summon for the rest of the turn after this card resolves, except monsters with that original type. This is really good at summoning Arcana Triumph Joker, though all the discarding means you're going to have to rely on your opponent for the attack power boost. But we still get access to that nasty removal, so it's not all bad. And if that was all, this wouldn't warrant much of a look, but because of how broad this card actually is, it's seen some serious brewing. Yubel decks have a big fiend monster you'd like to gain access to, same with most Earth Machine decks, and all the Earthbound Immortals aren't out of the question either. So if you have a deck with a level 10 monster and a monotype one at that, keep an eye out for how this can be used to give you an edge when you otherwise would struggle to get off the ground. Honestly, I'm mostly upset that I already used the Balatro reference. Now I have no good outro joke for this. Not that that's, stopped me in the past. Part 7. Primite. This is an archetype I had a lot of high hopes for, because while its more powerful options limited what you could do with them as an engine, many of their smaller techs had potential, and as it turns out, they've become popular picks for decks that randomly have normal monsters in their roster. While the big boss hasn't taken off quite as much yet, as the deck building requirements to make the most of their effect is a bit too costly, having unexpected dies with less restrictions ends up being really good for moving game plans along. Now let's see how the second wave builds off that. Primite Dragon Another Barrel is a level 4 Earth Dragon monster with 1600 attack and 0 defense, and if this card is normal summoned, you can set a Primite spell or trap card from your deck. You can also tribute this card to send a normal monster from your deck to the grave, and during the standby phase, if you have a normal monster on your field or in your grave, you can add this card from your grave to your hand. This will ensure that you almost always have Barrel with you for the rest of the game. The question is it worth playing? Well, by returning to the hand, you ensure that you can reveal a Primite monster for the activation conditions for Drill Beam, which is pretty nice, but if you set that quick play spell card, you're gonna have to wait a turn to use it. So instead, you can set Primite Lordly Load, which can then add Drill Beam to your hand. Or really, any Primite card. Setting up your graveyard is also necessary for a number of our effects. Roar and Howl both have grave effects that care about having normal monsters in your grave with less or more attack than their target respectively, so having a way to drop the right monster into the graveyard at the right time is going to be imperative. Not to mention that the more normal monsters you have in your grave, the more effective Imperial Dragons on Tribute Summon effect gets. For decks that are already running the engine, this is a great way to access it even more. And with the reintroduction of Dragon Rulers, banishing Redox is a great way to put this into your hand to get things rolling. But considering you have to use up your normal summon for that consistency, I don't see decks that aren't already using it giving it another chance. Primite Resounding Reaction is a counter trap card that, when your opponent would normal or special summon any number of monsters while you control a normal monster or a level 5 or higher Primite monster, except a token, you negate the summon, and if you do, banish those monsters. During your standby phase, if you control a Primite monster, you can set this card from your grave, but banish it when it leaves the field. Not really much to talk about here. Normal summoning Another Barrel gets this onto your field, though you will need a bigger Primite and or normal monster if you actually want to make use of it. It will be enough to reset this card, and the negating summons with banishing attached is pretty far out, especially on a repeatable card. But aside from that, it's basically a tool in your arsenal that you can use to screw with your opponent, something we've seen for decades now, even archetypally. I'm glad the card is advocating for itself, but I wouldn't really give this card a particularly resounding reaction myself. Part 8. 6 Samurai. Last set's update was incredible, introducing more ways to clear out the competition during the battle phase, ways to search the 6-strike sub-theme of cards, and an actual honest-to-goodness monster negate. The update for this set isn't quite as impressive, but does give us another in the 6-strike playbook. Let's check it out. 6-strike Sextuple Impact is a normal trap card that you can activate if you control 3 or more 6 Samurai Synchro monsters with different names, though the number of those required is reduced by 1 for every 6 Bushido counters on your field, and it destroys all cards your opponent controls. And if the set card in its owner's control is destroyed or banished by an opponent's card effect, you can special summon a 6 Samurai or Xian effect monster from your deck or extra deck. So if your opponent tries to get this removed before you can get it online, they'll have a whole new threat to deal with. The ability to get any 6 Samurai is already pretty swanky. But let's not overlook the Shien part. True, we don't need it to summon Shi-Ens because the ones that matter are already 6 samurai monsters, but Great Shogun Shien is usually left out in the cold, likely because it's one of the most win more cards in the game, and has gotten less effective as monsters now rule the game's action economy rather than spell and trap cards. But if you ever feel the desire to run it, there's now another way to field him, and that's pretty cool. Though I would honestly focus more on the activated effect, and considering how much material spam we get from the theme, as well as having the ability to just search this out, on top of all the Bushido counters we can potentially generate, this seems like a decently reliable way to reset your opponent's board. And this is where I would say I hope we keep the name, because then we would have Sex and Yu-Gi-Oh, but Sextet Summon beat me to it. Dang it. Part 9. Speedroids. Despite its best efforts, Wind just cannot seem to present a worthwhile threat to the game, at least ones that utilize their attribute as their defining feature. I don't want to hear anyone trying to claim that Fluon Deriz is a Wind deck. Speedroid is one of their foremost representatives, but even they struggle to put up results, despite a promising first wave of support and a prominent position in the Wind-themed Legendary Duelist pack. But surely this wave of support will solve everything, right? Speedroid Clack Colonel is a level 2 Wind Machine Pendulum monster with 200 attack, 1800 defense, and a scale of 8. As a pendulum spell, you can banish a Speedroid card from your grave to place a Speedroid Pendulum monster from your deck into your pendulum zone. Also, you can't special summon for the rest of the turn, except wind monsters. As a monster, if this card on the field is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon a Speedroid Clack Colonel from your hand, deck, or grave as a tuner. And if a Clearwing monster battles while this card is face up in your extra deck during damage calculation, you can banish this card, and if you do, that monster gains 700 attack. Now, by itself, this card seems very disjointed. It needs to be destroyed to float into another copy, but also lacks a way to do that itself. And while Speedroids are no stranger to pendulums at this point, it's still not their primary game plan, so to lean more into it feels like an exercise in futility. But all of this makes a lot more sense when we pair it with another new release, which we'll cover right now. Speedroid Wing Synchron is a level 5 Wind Machine Pendulum Tuner monster with 1500 attack, 1000 defense, and a scale of 4. As a pendulum spell, once per turn, you can destroy both this card and a level 2 Wind Pendulum monster card in your pendulum zone, and if you do, special summon a Clear Wing Synchro Dragon from your extra deck, which is treated as a proper Synchro summon. Also, for the rest of the turn, cards in your pendulum zone cannot be destroyed by card effects. Also, you can't special summon monsters except wind ones. As a monster, if this card is added to the extra deck face up and there are 2 or more different monster types among the wind synchro monsters that you control, you can send a Speedroid spell or trap card from your deck to the grave. So the way they fit together revolves around you having Clack Colonel and another Speedroid card in your graveyard. So you'll want to try to grab this mid combo, like with Rubber Band Shooter, or a Marble Machine that you searched off of Rubber Band Shooter. Once you have the setup, you place Clack Colonel in the scales, banishing that card from your graveyard to put Wing Synchron into your other pendulum zone, then use Wing Synchron's effect, blowing up itself and the Clack Colonel to summon out Clear Wing Synchro Dragon, at which point you get 2 more effects. Clack Colonel will summon out another copy of itself with the tuner status, and if you had a Machine Speedroid Synchro monster on board like Cork Shooter to go along with that Clear Wing, you'll get Wing Synchron's effect, letting you bin any Speedroid spell or trap from your deck, which is super underwhelming since we have a total of like 2 Speedroid trap cards with grave effects. Duplicate is cool for getting you an extra tuner and body, but doesn't help us much here. Though that's because you're probably already in a great position. You combine that Marble Machine and the Cork Shooter that you have on board, and you can make yourself a level 5 Synchro tuner. And you can combine that and the Clear Wing that we just made to, well, we've got our new Synchro that's kind of goofy coming up later. For now, just know that these 2, Clack Colonel and Wing Synchron, basically make you a free Clear Wing Synchro Dragon, which is a great jumping off point for most Wind Synchro monsters once you get a knack for the play sequences. Or should I say, a clack for the play sequences. High Speedroid Glider 2 is a level 5 Wind Machine Synchro Tuner monster, hey we just talked about needing one of those, requiring a Wind Machine Tuner and 1 or more non-tuner monsters as material. If this card is Synchro summoned, you can target a non-tuner level 7 or lower Wind Synchro monster in your grave and special summon it. And if your opponent special summons any number of monsters and you control a Clear Wing monster except during the damage step, you can banish this card from your grave to increase the levels of all face-up monsters your opponent currently controls by 5, which, what? Yeah, it kind of threw me for a loop too when I first read this. It doesn't help that Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon has been the premier member of this theme this whole time. We've kind of gotten used to it just having a blanket monster negate. But remember that the original Clear Wing Synchro Dragon only interacts with monsters that are level 5 or higher. So Glider 2 basically sets you up for success, as long as your opponent's not running Xyz or Link monsters. Though my understanding is that with most playlines, you're never really gonna leave Clearwing on the board for any period of time, using it as a starting point for more powerful monsters. But I guess it's good to have just in case. And if anything, messing with your opponent's levels can make it more difficult for them to go down certain playlines, so that's something. The two main upsides is that A, the only other level 5 Wind Synchro Tuner monster so far was a Battle Wasp, so this is just a strict upgrade for our usages. And B, it's a monster reborn for your other Wind Synchros, giving you more ways to make even bigger Synchros. This makes for some excellent extension, but I am highly disappointed in its sense of humor. I can see what it's trying to do, the joke almost writes itself, but there is no high Speedroid Glider 1. There's passing Glider, but that doesn't count. It may seem a bit harsh, but here on the orbital platform, funny business is serious business. Crystal Clear Wing Over Synchro Dragon is a level 12 Wind Dragon Synchro monster with 3500 attack and 3000 defense, requiring either 2 or more tuners or a tuner synchro monster, as well as Clear Wing Synchro Dragon as material. Which means this synchro can be made with either Yusei's Clear Mind Delta Excel Synchro Summon technique or Jack's Double Tuning technique. Very funny. It must be synchro summoned, and once per turn, when another card or its effect is activated as a quick effect, you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. And if you destroyed a monster, this card gains attack equal to that monster's original attack until the end of the turn. If this face-up synchro summon card and its owner's control leaves the field by an opponent's card, you can special summon a Clearwing monster from your extra deck. Here it is, the new culmination of Speedroid power, and it kinda sucks. I mean, it's a big body, it has an Omni Negate, but like, we already have that. Stardust Dragon has been spitting out Omni Negate bodies that do well in battle since 5Ds. Granted, Speedroid has a better infrastructure for getting you material for this, and it only needs one non-tuner synchro in the form of Clear Wing. But a card being easier to summon doesn't necessarily mean it'll cut the mustard if it lacks firepower. True, this does float into any Clearwing monster when your opponent bumps it off, which can get you into the overcosted Crystal Clearwing or the genuinely nifty Clearwing Rider. But because the summon doesn't count as a legit synchro summon, you end up shutting off half of those monsters' effects in the process. And the ironic thing is that the most famous of the entire Synchro Dragon line, Crystal Wing, yeah, that's not eligible for the float. Can you believe this? At this point, I just think Speedroid is cursed. We are never, ever getting any new support that doesn't come with like a million caveats. It's driving me up the walls! Speedroid Clear Wing Wander is a normal trap card that targets cards your opponent controls, up to the number of different monster types among Wind Synchro monsters you control, and destroys them. If your opponent special summons any number of monsters except during the damage step, you can banish this card from your grave, then target a Wind Synchro monster that you control. Banish it, then return it to the field. Oh lord, there really isn't an original bone in this theme's body, huh? This effect is here largely to reset the effect of Crystal Clearwing over Synchro Dragon, because it's not a hard once per turn. So if it leaves and then comes back, you can use it again. A method of resetting that a lot of Stardust cards currently utilize. But you know, I get it. If it's not broke, don't fix it. The main problem is that this doesn't do anything by itself, so the primary function of the card better be good, but the activated effect on the field is also ass, because it's trying to be a Ritual Beast Steeds, but only for Wind Synchros and only among different types. Not different names, types. Now, the intention is to get 2 pops, one for dragons and one for machines, but you really can add anything here. Though sadly, the only other big Wind Synchro worth playing was Barone, which can no longer add their warrior typing to the lineup because they're, you know, banned. But I guess you can set this up with Wing Synchron's effect to make the most of your big shiny new toys, so there's that, I guess. Wander was right, because nothing here is catching my interest, so I'm just gonna wander off. Part 10, Tenyi. Now these are some synchros I can get excited for. Not only did Tenyi attempt to push the envelope when it comes to the involvement of non-effect monsters, but would shore up Sword Soul in a way that made it feel like the two themes should have always been one to begin with. It was both easy to pick up and incredibly powerful without ever being the most oppressive thing in the room, and I'm glad to see we get another round of support for everyone's favorite vanilla champions. Let's take a look. Tenyi Spirit Tsuruya is a level 4 light worm tuner monster with 1600 attack and 0 defense, and if you control a worm or a face-up non-effect monster of any type, you can special summon this card from your hand. And if this card is sent to the grave as synchro material for the synchro summon of a worm monster, you can special summon a Tenyi Link monster from your extra deck, then lose life points equal to the Link rating of the monster you summoned times 1000. Also, the Link monster you summoned can't be used as Link material itself. Now, this card's pretty nifty. The main problem with the Tenyi Spirits is that while they can leap out of your hand with barely any setup, they stop working if you do have any setup. But Tsuruya doesn't have to worry about any of that. In fact, it's kind of the opposite. Instead of being summoned for free when you have a blank field, you have to have at least a worm or a non-effect monster on board to get that summon. So one line of play is that you can special summon Ashuna from your hand, link into Monk, banish the Ashuna to bring out any level 4 Tenyi from your deck, and would you look at that? There's a worm monster on the field. Special summon Tsuruya from your hand, and now you can make Draco Berserker, Chi-Jiao, or Bashia, or even a new level 8 monster we'll meet in the next slide. And as you might gather from that statement, Tsuruya isn't just a great support card for Tenyi. It's an incredible extender for any worm deck that you can think of. Yang Xing benefits immensely from having a tuner you can just drop out of your hand next to your on-theme monsters, and Sword Soul can search it out with Emergence if you have a synchro on board, to say nothing of it being the perfect follow-up to your opponent denying you your tuner token. Even Ryuga can use Tsuruya to great effect. It's searchable by the effective War Zone, and you can summon it while you have Hakva on field. And if you do use this as synchro material, you even get a bonus Link monster to go with that synchro that you made. Tenyi's never been lacking in abilities to link climb, but getting up into Sahasrara can be a little resource intensive, potentially leaving you with no non-effect monsters on board to enable its protection effect. To say nothing of how making synchros alongside it is harder than it needs to be. So Tsuruya helps to make our boards a lot more intimidating, even if it does cost you half your life points to do so. I mean, you can't even use the monster you summon as Link material, which can be a pain if you summon Monk or Shaman, but if it's Sahasrara, well, why would you do that anyway? However, that life point loss can actually kill you if you summon a monster with too high of a Link rating during the late game, so be careful when you use this. In summary, it's a versatile tuner for an entire type rather than just one deck. And, if nothing else, it gives the Tenyi players a good spot in Tekken tournaments. Doing our best impression of Reina Mishima. Surya! 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 Tenyi Spirit Mula Adhara is a level 8 light worm synchro monster with 3000 attack and 0 defense, requiring generic material. If they're synchro summoned and you have 2 or more worm monsters in your grave and or banishment, you can add a field spell from your deck to your hand. And while you control a face-up non-effect monster, it gains the following effects. It can be targeted or destroyed by your opponent's card effects, and it can attack twice during each battle phase. Yeah, did that first effect that adds a field spell make you shake? Well, it's not unreasonable to have done so. A generic level 8 synchro that mimics terraforming on summon is a massive can of worms that should never be opened. But thankfully, Mula Adhara is technically not that card, as you have to have 2 worms in circulation to actually get the search. So for now, it's most likely only going to be tied to worm-focused decks that need quick access to their field spells. So you're basically looking at Tenyi, Metaphys, and Ryuga right now. But Yu-Gi-Oh players are pretty crafty, so keep an eye on this. You may be cursing its name soon enough. And while our current field spell, Flawless Perfection of the Tenyi, does leave a lot to be desired in the face of more modern field spells, we do have a new one coming up. And spoilers, that's going to turn this card into a searcher for something other than field spells in the theme. Outside of the Pandora's Box that is a free field spell search though, Mula Adhara being a double attacking 3000 attack body with Red Eye's Dark Dragoon levels protection makes it great for finishing out games. It's even got a little something for the lore heads out there, with Monk being empowered by their Tenyi of choice, Adhara, giving a little bit of Shin Ryu to Berserker's Akuma. See, that's what offering yourself as a vessel to the spirit of a dragon will get you. Sometimes you betray your home and family to obtain the power of banishing effect monsters if they so much as sneeze within a 5-mile radius of you, and other times you get the power to add Secret Village to your hand. No, it doesn't matter that you can't actually use it, we are here to send a message. Tenyi Infinity is a field spell card that, when activated, lets you add a copy of Vessel for the Dragon Cycle or Heavenly Dragon Circle from your deck to your hand. You contribute a worm monster to target a monster on the field and destroy it, and during the end phase, you can send this card to the grave, and if you do, place a copy of Flawless Perfection of the Tenyi from your deck or grave to your field zone. Right, so the initial translation of this card was Eternal Perfection of the Tenyi, and the card really lives up to the namesake. One of the most frustrating things about Tenyi is how two of our best setup tools have the Draco Slayer field spell problem, that being not being name-stamped as Tenyi cards, meaning that we can't search them through Heavenly Dragon Circle's Grave Effect, as slow as that search effect is. But thanks to this, both now are searchable, which is a huge help. And while Tenyi Infinity doesn't provide the absurd protection of Flawless, it does let us convert spare worms on board into monster removal, which can be very handy if your opponent's got a monster that promises to be annoying later, or if you need to clear the way to summon a Tenyi spirit other than Tsuruya. As for the field spell tag-out effect, Tenyi's clearly been taking notes from Camelot, Realm of Noble Knights, and Noble Arms, as Tenyi Infinity works on pretty much the same principle. While Flawless Protection of the Tenyi is a more impactful card than Noble Knights of the Round Table, it suffers the same issue, that being that it doesn't pay for itself until your opponent special summons, and only while you control a non-effect monster or a set monster at that, which makes seeing it in your starting hand kind of painful. And Infinity ties that loose end up quite nicely. It just goes to show that pain is temporary, but glory is eternal. Emergency section. You see, our core sets always have some slots for TCG exclusives and OCG imports, and those weren't revealed until very late into this video's production, so strap in, we've got ourselves a lightning round. Though, keep in mind, we will be waiting to talk about Mitsurugi until after the next core set gets released, so we get a more complete picture about what the theme is supposed to do. Beast of Talwar, the Sword Summit, may not look like it's part of another archetype, but you'd be wrong because it's always treated as an Archfiend card. It's a level 7 Dark Fiend monster with 2400 attack and 2150 defense, and if you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. The first time this card would be destroyed by an opponent's card effect each turn, it is not, and neither player can target other monsters with equipped spell cards or effects. Very funny here, not sure what the utility is going to be outside of being another big level 7 monster that you can summon from your hand for free, but I guess having some kind of silver bullet for the Mikanko matchup is nice to have. But this thing is going right to jail because it has committed the most heinous of crimes, covering up Talwar's immaculate abs. What is wrong with you people? DD Post is a continuous trap card that boosts the attack of monsters you control by 300 for each card type among your banished cards, counting monsters, spells, and traps. Once per turn during the main phase, you can banish a card from your hand or grave, then shuffle one of your banished cards into the deck, and if this card is banished, you can place it face up on your field. That's actually pretty nifty. You basically get yourself a free power boost in any deck that banishes their own cards, letting you both banish more cards to enable their effects while recycling ones you want to see again. I don't want to get too optimistic about this, but I could really see this taking off in the right deck. It's certainly got a better chance at it than Dyke Greffer does. Dude, you have got to stop harassing this woman. You have other multi-dimensional escapades to be going on. Shadow Severing Strike isn't a DD card, but it is DD coded, so we're keeping it. It's a continuous spell card that, if any number of cards are banished from the hand and or field to activate a monster effect, except during the damage step, you can apply one of the following effects based on one of the card types banished. If it was a monster card, negate the effects of a face-up spell or trap card on the field until the end of the turn. If it was a spell, draw 2 cards. And if it was a trap card, banish a monster on the field. And if this card is banished to activate a monster effect, you can add one of your other banished cards to the hand. Sadly, this does not combo very well with Post, since Strike only counts cards being banished for the cost of monsters, which is probably why the one that keys off of monsters being banished is the most bland. Maybe it's there to turn off your own copies of Dimensional Fissure or Macrocosmos so you can fill your grave again, but the real value is in the other 2 modes. Though you're gonna need a card that can eat spell and trap cards for their effect, and I'm kind of drawing a blank right now, especially out of cards that are actually playable. Leave a comment down below about what deck you want to see this being used in. I'd spend the time doing it myself, but I can't be wasting that time trying to get hyped up over this cool anime sword, even though it is pretty dope. Detonating Kuriboh is a level 1 Dark Fiend monster with 300 attack and 200 defense, the real indicator of if you're a Kuriboh card or not, and if a Kuriboh monster card is on the field, you can special summon this card from your hand. When an opponent activates a monster effect as a quick effect, you can equip this card you control to that opponent's monster as an equipped spell with the following effect. The equipped monster's effects are negated. So it doesn't actually explode, though I guess that's what the card detonate is actually for. Instead, this is a kind of fun negation that actually works on the chain because of its quick effect. If your opponent is about to fire off a monster effect you don't like, you just equip them with this bundle of tribbles, and by the time their effect resolves, it'll be negated. This is in reference to the source material, where Pegasus's Thousand Eyes Restrict attempted to absorb the Kuribohs, which would just then explode on contact with its numerous eyes, causing it to be blinded and negating its effects. Now, it's pretty telegraphed and is pretty much a one and done kind of thing, but it's 1,000 times better than other similar cards. Magistus Chorozo is a level 4 Dark Spellcaster Fusion Tuner monster with 1,000 attack and 2,800 defense, requiring a Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, or Link monster, and any Spellcaster monster as material. It must first be Fusion summoned, or special summoned from the extra deck by sending the correct Fusion material monster cards you control to the graveyard. Once per turn, when a monster declares an attack, you can target it, negate the attack, and if you do, this card gains attack equal to that monster's attack until the end of this turn. Then you can return that monster to the hand, giving you some pretty nifty battle protection and removal, even if it is also telegraphed. The more interesting piece of utility is that this can be used to bounce your own monsters back to hand, while preserving their attack power with Chorozo. And while the boost only lasts until the end of your turn, thus leaving the 1,000 attack monster in attack position vulnerable to the crackback, you can just use the effect on your opponent again during their turn when they try to attack. So this plush is a lot more frightening than it might appear to be. But the real draw here is the fusion materials. Sure, the alternate method may trick you into contact fusing this with a Magistus and any of the extra deck monsters that will inevitably get attached to them, because this uses monster cards as material for that, not just monsters. But don't be fooled. This is actually one of the new best super polymerization targets on the face of the earth, essentially covering every relevant extra deck monster from now until the end of time. But Nova, what if my deck doesn't run spellcasters? Hey, that's not my problem. I'm playing Brandon. Heck, it's even a level 4 tuner. How do they get away with this stuff? And that's all the updates we've got for Supreme Darkness. This set is chock full of awesome updates to a staggering amount of fan favorites, and while its impact on the meta seems dubious at best, I'm always happy to see older themes get a fresh coat of paint, and seeing all the brews that get concocted in their wake. So now that we've seen all that this pack has to offer, which theme are you most excited to build in this upcoming pack? And do you think any of them have a shot at the top spot of this format? Let me know down below, and if you haven't already, please be sure to like the video if you liked it, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and be sure to share this video with somebody you know who loves Yu-Gi-Oh! It really does a lot to help me out. Today's episode is brought to you by Dragon Shield. Get the sleeves as strong as dragon scales and get 5% off your order by using the coupon code GoldenNova at checkout. It was also brought to you by my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commanders, Upstairs Media and the Critic of Innocence, Nebula Navigator's 3rd Dynasty, 50 Gigabytes, Ada Basilisk, Adam Zajdel, Ancient Wizard, Andrew Newman, Battle Axe, Kane Senpai, Chibi Gohan, Christopher Fuss, Clockswork, Comrade Copperbottom, Eric, Frankie, Garland Chaos, Green Knight, Great Big Pillock, Hair Bear, Happy Majin, Harry the Ominous Benefactor, Iron Zero, Iskander 711, Carp, Marion James E. Picata, Millennia Asta, Muse Clark, Neon Yaminair, Orozco 09096, Panther J, Bat Boos, Rebel King Lucifer, Red Eyes Jackalow, RJ the Jank Monarch, Thievery Coast and the Wizard Moose, Cosmic Crusaders Ally Vatnia, Animasta, Anthrak, Baron von Titty Sprinkles, Beelzephyr, Fish, Beluga Masta, Blitzwolf, Charlie Mercury, Chaz Ghost, Dr. Entity RIP, Aaron the World Breaker, Eva Padilla, Gary Lickbread, Hike Boyagian, Herbal D, Inblink, Kale the Dragon, Lobomaru02, Manga Pages, Matt Simmons, Natiel Lee Alexander, Nitromo, Not Al Gore, Nyx, Obsidian, Raynor Leong, Rhyme Kairos, Schwinny, Shizuka Nijimura, Sir Knight JCB, Sophie, apparently, Sphilia, Stephen Williamson, the Legendary Raven, the Phantom Knights of Shitted Pants, the Gene, Tiger X2476, Weasel King of Weaseltown, and Zaldureka, as well as the wonderful Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. If you'd like to help me in my journey to cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, get my videos early, be a part of these credits and other awesome perks, it would mean the world to me if you would check out the link to my Patreon in the description or consider joining as a YouTube member. And if you'd like to see more about the decks covered here today, there's a playlist for all the videos covered in this roundup right here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.